Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Umbombela and the NADA DPP Performance Program, broadcasting live. We have a live studio audience. Thank you very much to the dealers and sponsors for being here. And we also have a virtual attendance as well on Zoom, which is fantastic. So welcome to the next chapter of our NADA Roadshow. Coming from Umbombela, which is really, really exciting. It's the one place the Springboks can actually win. And what an amazing event there was for the city and for the area. I'm sure the dealers felt that, the local businesses felt that, and I think it was a fantastic thing that South African Rugby did for the town. Let's just go on the next one. I'm going to talk about what NADA's been up to of late, just to give you guys a bit of insight. As you know, my name is Mark Domiso. I'm the chairman of NADA. I'm also today's program director, and I'll be emceeing today, talking a bit about NADA, also talking a little bit about my views on the industry and some challenges that we're facing from my personal viewpoint. And then we go into a bit of an interesting day. We've got Leon Theron from Toyota South Africa beaming in at about 2:30 to give us some insights into Toyota and what's happening there. And we've got a motivational speaker. And then we've got a very good panel interview. We have some polling questions as well. Everybody in the audience, on the virtual audience, will be able to answer those. And the answers will come at the end of the session. So we'll be asking the polls as I go through my talk. And then afterwards, when we do the panel session, we'll be revealing the answers. So please participate. If you have any questions from the audience, there'll be a microphone later for the panel session. But as we go through the day, it would be really nice if the virtual audience also just populated questions in the chat section, and the team at the back will attempt to answer them if they can. Otherwise, the really good ones will get a bit of exposure when we do our panel discussion later. Okay, ready to go. So, what has NADA been doing of late? Let's just go quickly. We recently held the DSI Awards at Westbank. It was a really, really good, it's really our headline industry event, which includes our manufacturers. A lot of the NADA stuff generally does not get to that level. We generally focus very much on the dealer level. It was a great event, attendance by every single manufacturer in South Africa. There were some really, really good results in the DSI survey itself. We had an over 90% completion rate in DSI this year on passenger cars. We had an over 90% dealer completion rate on light commercial, and on medium and heavy commercial was just over 80%. I think, if you take a world standard, I mean, they do not get to those kinds of numbers in other markets in the world where they do DSI, like the UK or Europe, etc. The dealers take it really seriously, and so do the manufacturers. And at the event, I really did say, and that those of you that are on dealer council, it's really important to take those results and go to your manufacturer via your dealer council and thrash out some of the issues. It does really make a difference. The manufacturers have that data, and they really take it seriously. So I really appreciate this. We really appreciate the support that the dealers did, and the manufacturers as well. What else is facing us at the moment, and what is NADA really up to? So the first thing, as you know, is the increased regulation that we are getting as dealers in South Africa. And the big hot topic at the moment is DIC. As you would have known, and would have probably been a little bit confusing, it was even confusing to me, we all got something called an RFI from the Financial Service Conduct Authority, and it was a request for information from dealers regarding DIC and what do we do on behalf of the banks and what role, and it was a really, really detailed questionnaire that really, quite frankly, needed quite a lot of expertise to complete. With a really short deadline in place, as NADA, what we decided to do is approach the FSCA directly and ask them if NADA could do a consolidated response on behalf of industry. And then we could get really good resources involved, such as Brandon Cohen from Motus, who's our legal compliance officer, and the team at Motus actually helped us a lot in terms of the NADA view on an answer to those questionnaires, which some of those questions were exceptionally difficult to answer, and some of them weren't even answerable by a dealer. So at the end of July, at the end of June, we got a 1-month extension, and we sent out our NADA response to the dealer network, all the NADA members, to get a consensus as to whether they liked our answers, whether they agreed with our answers, or whether they thought we should add more dealer insights. And as a result, we sent in industry-based response. Not only did we send a response with basically every single NADA member's blessing, we also got a covering note backing from NAAMSA to really stress the importance of DIC and how important that is to not only dealer health, dealer viability, dealer profitability, as well as skills. So we have really pushed hard to the FSCA in terms of this is not just one dealer's response. We are the biggest stakeholder in the chain. I think at a guess, DRC is worth about 10 billion rand a year. So, you divide that by, or you just take that kind of money and clout going into the system and assisting deals and doing everything that process does. Our industry would be forever hurt without it. And I think the FSCA certainly has that message. The takeout really, and what we're getting from the regulator, is that the big problem with DRC is just really linking rate to the amount paid. And I think there's a really good consensus that the overwhelming view is if we can de-link those two things, DRC becomes less contentious because it really doesn't prejudice a customer if they're getting prime plus 8 and the dealer's getting 50 grand DRC. That certainly doesn't look good. We don't control that process. We don't control how those matrices work, but we certainly have taken the view that if we can decouple that and DRC becomes more something for services rendered and is equitable to the work that we put in, and we know how difficult that process is. We know how difficult F&I is. We know how much work goes into that and how much risk there is in that process, and how much skills and investment we have to as dealers put in. I think that was the overwhelming consensus, and we will be following that up with the FSCA in due course. We have requested a physical meeting with them, and it's really important, and we did this with the competition board when we did right to repair. We worked out very quickly that as the biggest potential stakeholder with the most to lose, had the right to repair or the automotive guidelines been a really negative document, we were the biggest stakeholder with the most to lose, and the Competition Commission actually dealt with us the least. They dealt with MIWA, they dealt with all the other players, but certainly not ourselves. So we certainly banged the door down then. We'll be banging the door down with the FSCA now and going through our proposals and going through our viewpoints and having these robust debates and just showing how reliant our industry is on this process. And we have very good people to do that, and we have relationships with them. So that is a really critical process and just one of the things that NADA has been doing. Next item, transformation. We have recently set up a transformation committee. Unfortunately, they could not be here today. They are also dealers, and they are. But we have got a really good committee in place. We've got some big challenges on transformation in our industry, and we all know that we've got a skill shortage. It's well known and documented. And one of the icebergs that is going to hit our industry, just like other industries, is the Department of Labour issuing sectoral EE targets. And these deadlines are going to hit us one day. I think it's about a 5-year away target that the Department of Labour will put more stringent EE targets in place on all of our businesses. Now, firstly, the good news about that is that we have some time. And the Transformation Committee, one of their biggest roles now will be to set up a roadmap and assist in dealer education, especially in the independent space, where we don't have the resources like a Motus or a Supergroup, etc. We don't have the resources to understand EE targets or even transformation and all these things that we can do to upskill ourselves. So the role of the Transformation Committee, just one facet, is to sit and put a bit of light into this roadmap to how we're going to get ourselves to these EE targets that are going to hit us in 5 years' time. So I would suggest that you do stay close to that one. We will be communicating eventually with the Department of Labour. We are in negotiations with them as to the exact level of these targets. They are not onerous, but they are real, and it is in line with the general direction of our country, and this is the country that we live in South Africa. So the good news is that we have time, and that's the most important thing. I certainly look at the Springbok Rugby side and what they've done. We can do at least as good a job. I'm sure we can. So that is what's happening on transformation. Bank MSA agreements. Another area that we've been working on with NADA, is that these bank MSAs, absolute nightmare documents to deal with from a dealer perspective, in the sense that they are really complicated. and they set up a very important relationship between ourselves, the bank, and the customer. And we just felt that as industry, we needed a little bit more external advice as to how these documents, do they suit us, do they suit the banks, and do they suit the customer. And as you know, we've been reviewing these. We've completed 3 of the 4 banks now. The last bank that we are currently reviewing is Standard Bank. And as these documents become confirmed and acceptable from a NADA point of view, each NADA member will be issued the final draft the final MSA that you can then sit and sign with the bank. Okay, so that's very important that you, once those are in place, that you understand that that is the document that you can sign. So we've negotiated with the big 4 banks only, obviously we all know who they are. Okay. Now I need to talk about challenges to our industry, and this is really just the viewpoints that I see. I do deal with this stuff every day as well. Right now, I think, as we all know, and we can all feel it, we can feel this economy tightening. We've got interest rate hikes, we've got fuel hikes, we've got inflation. And the problem is that we're seeing this not only in South Africa, but around the world. The US, the UK, Europe are seeing once-in-a-generation type inflation increases, 8, 9, 10%. We're starting to see that now. I don't know if you've seen what a can of sunflower oil costs on the shelf of a Spar. It's like 48 bucks. Okay, I can remember it's 15 Rand, 12 Rand before COVID. It is absolutely frightening what inflation is doing. We have seen the benefit of that, however, in our used car businesses. And the used car business has been a bit of a feast. It's been fantastic. That now, however, is linked to what I want to call a bit of a famine. And the famine sometimes works with the feast, because if there's a bit of a short supply, when those cars are available, we're all in a very good position. However, we're facing the flood, which is coming now as well. And I think the big challenge in our business in used cars is that there is a softening of the market, and there is a bit more of an opening up of supply of new cars, which is now going to start competing there. We will talk about this at length with the other dealers that we have in the panel, but I would be exceptionally cautious. We can feel it now. The trade is starting to sort of do the wallet Macarena. They're difficult to get covers, not everyone's paying, and there are also, you've got to be quite careful of bad players in the market. There are some traders. The trade is the one area that I think we need to be very careful of, just in terms of cash flow and age stock. So in my opinion, we have to be exceptionally careful there. And the days of paying retail plus for cars and trying to sell them at retail plus 20%, I think, are long gone. That's my first thing. So we are going to do our very first poll. Okay, and our poll will be on used cars. So if everybody can log on, I don't know if the poll has been put up. The audience members here, please put up your QR codes. And the poll will read as follows: when will the used car bubble burst? Option 1, it's burst already. Option 2, in the next 3 months. Option 3, 3 to 6 months. Option 4, 6 to 12 months. So if you could just fill out that poll and give us your opinion there. We'll reveal the answers to this exciting question in the panel discussion at about 3:45. Okay. Cool. The next challenge to our industry is exactly the same thing, actually, except it's on new cars. So let's just go here quickly. One more. All right. We have a very similar but inversely proportional effect on our new car stock. So as you know, we've been waiting for this any day now. With this chip supply shortage and global supply chain shortage, we're wanting the stock to come. Please, manufacturer, bring the stock, bring the stock. Well, one problem that we have towards the end of the year is that there is going to be a very healthy supply of stock, and it's going to come at some point. And effectively, this is the flood. So what will happen there is you've got to be exceptionally careful, because we are going to have a little bit more pressure on our stock holding. We're going to have more pressure on interest, and we are going to have an effect on used car pricing once again, especially when the new car numbers start sort of slowing down a bit, or there is a bit of pressure on our retail businesses. Interest rates are climbing as well. So the next relevant question that I want to put together is, When do you feel that the OEM historical short supply of new cars will get back to a normal/surplus supply? Okay, in the next month, in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months, or in the next 12 months? Yes.
Saying that the submission's closed, and that you need to open it.
Okay, we're on it. We will let you know when the submission. We're just working on it in the background for the audience. Okay. All right. So we'll bring that poll back again. There we go. Try it again, guys. Okay. Okay, sorry guys, you want to, just this live audience, you want to try to do the poll again? Okay, all okay? Good. Okay, so just a very relevant question. We've got to just be careful in our businesses what's going to be hitting us. I remember in our one branded business in the Cape, in the month of lockdown, our interest bill was 330,000 Rand. 6 months after lockdown, it was 60,000 Rand. Okay, and it's been like that for 2 years. It's not going to be like that in the next 6 months, and we need to start preparing for that. My personal view. Okay, next challenges to our industry. This is not really an industry challenge, but more an interesting thought piece. Right to repair. The automotive aftermarket guidelines were issued roughly just over a year ago. It was quite a scary time for all of us. I don't know if you remember, we did not know what would hit us. We didn't know what would happen to our workshops. We certainly were exceptionally worried as to what the effect of these guidelines would be. We are now 1 year down the road, and the reason I'm raising it, it's actually been quite topical on Talk Radio, on 702, and a bit of the press, is that a lot of the consumer journalists have been approaching Right to Repair, getting them live on air and asking them, listen, what has the effect of this been? What has happened? Has this helped? Has it opened up the sector? And it is quite interesting in terms of some of the takeouts there. Just yesterday, Gunther Schmidt, who heads up Right to Repair, was on 702 for half an hour. I've got a recording and I listened to the interview. And quite amazingly, some of the takeouts were, one, he was actually very good. He was very straight. He certainly, it was a very balanced interview. The big takeouts to me was they certainly haven't had a run on in their workshops. It was merely about just opening up a little bit of choice. They were very, actually, if you have a motor plan in place or a service plan in place, utilize that. Be careful of people doing work on your car and affecting the warranty. And I think at the end of the day, the reality is that the customer still votes with their feet. And I think we as an industry are certainly very robust and actually very credible when we haven't had pushback. If you look at the kind of PR and press that was going into that right to repair sort of juggernaut, we don't have customers. By and large, 99% of our customers are choosing service plans. 99% are wanting the maintenance plan. They all want to come service with us. I don't know if anyone's different, but we certainly aren't seeing a mass defection in our business. And I think it's a testament to dealers in South Africa and how we handle our customers, and the fact that we do a good job. And that we are very credible in the market. So that was a big takeout for me, certainly listening to these interviews. So yeah, I don't know what your views on those are, but we can discuss that later in the panel. So our third poll is a Right to Repair poll, and this will see if my view on Right to Repair is going to work. And the poll is 1 year. After 1 year, have the aftermarket guidelines, i.e. the Right to Repair legislation, had any notable effect on your business after sales throughput? Simple yes or no. Is everyone online? Is it working? Okay, good. What's the time? All right, challenges to our industry continued. We have this topic that we discuss and we never know really when it's going to hit us. And that is, what is going to be the future of our powertrains? An interesting question out here in Nelspruit, where a lot of our cars are obviously ICE cars and especially buckies, etc., etc. The first take I'd have is that the Toyota Corolla Cross, when it's been in supply, the hybrid version has been taken up far bigger than anyone's expectation purely on a hybrid car. And electric cars, realistically, will probably only start properly coming into effect, in my view, probably 2024 in any kind of reasonable volume, simply because we've got all the premium players coming in with product now for the next sort of 18 months. And how will electric cars just fit into our dealerships, you know? And I think the reality with this is that it's only my view, first, Eskom is not going to affect electric cars in any way, shape or form. I'm sorry, but it's not. If you are a person in a metro city that drives 20 k's to work, Eskom isn't an issue in your life. The bigger issue to me is just bringing that one cheap, well-built, well-liked electric car, and it's going to be a no-brainer. I think what you'll see is that when you have a 300,000 or 400,000 rand equivalent of a small subcompact SUV, and this car can charge in 15 minutes, and it does 400 kilometers on a tank, on a charge, and it costs a quarter of a tank of petrol to charge the thing, I think we're going to see quite a big flood of these cars. However, the tech's not quite here yet. But I do believe that we will have a far bigger electric force in our time than we ever thought. But it won't be as soon as we think. But nonetheless, it's a really big debate. And we have a nice poll, and Leo and Yaku are also going to debate this one with me. But our fourth poll on pure electric cars, okay, will be, how long will it take the South African market to reach 10% market share of pure electric cars? Okay, so this is not hybrids or anything. These are vehicles just with batteries. Okay. 1 to 2 years, 2 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, beyond 5 years. Are we all connected there? Okay. Okay. All right, if we can get rid of the scroll. All right, next one. All right, and the most relevant one really is the challenges to our industry is the market and where we've ended up. There are a lot of questions as to where will we end up in our total market in South Africa and how big is our South African market. As you will remember, in the COVID year, we ended up on about 389,000 industry sales for the year. Okay, that's an important number. That was in our COVID year with lockdown, etc. Last year, calendar, December to December 2021, the industry managed to finish on 466,000 from a moderate take-up of rental, etc., and also probably a bit of short supply. This year, the market forecast was going to be in the region of anywhere between, if you were Westbank, 525, and some of the other more bullish players were even north of 550,000 cars. So we don't really know where we will end up. So far for the year, we are on, as of July, we're on 297,000 sales. Okay, so that's for the 7 months trade. What does that extrapolate to the end of the year? If we just extrapolate that, divide by 7 times by 12, we end up at about 509,000. Okay. However, we have the market leader in Toyota not having been able to supply for the last couple of months. And how will the effect of Toyota now supplying all those awesome Fortuners and Hiluxes and Hiaces and Crosses, will the market grow by their supply? Will some other players take a bit of a dip? We don't really know. But what we would really like to look at is our fifth poll. So I've given you a little bit of insight into the total NAAMSA numbers because I look at them a lot. But we would like to know, where do you think industry sales will end up at the end of the year to December? Will we remain 500 to 510,000? Will we give you a little bit more, 510 to 520,000, or greater than 530,000 units? Bearing in mind we're tracking about 510 at the moment. Oh, no, that's a question for later. Are we able to patch in Leon yet? Not yet? Okay. All right. What I'm going to do is issue you guys probably with another poll, which is probably the best way forward for now, and we'll issue this one as well, and then we'll deal with the panel later. We've seen quite a lot of interesting trends when we always get to market tightening. We've seen downward buying, okay? So everybody's seen that in their businesses, people trading in their heavies. We've seen the rise of the Chinese players suddenly coming into the market with more circling, that I can assure you. We've had to deal with interest rate increases. We've also had to look at age. We've also now dealing with aging used cars, which is something we haven't had to deal with for about 18 months. So what I would like to ask you on the next poll, is this poll available? We can put it up. Okay, so the next poll for today is which factors below are affecting your dealership most at present? So if you just got to pick one, what is your biggest challenge or factor or thing that you're looking into a dealership going, wow, we've got to get the small SUVs in our used car floor, or gee, we wish we had a Chinese brand to sell, or we have a Chinese brand to sell and it's wonderful, or we've got interest rate increases and we've got a lot of declines. Whatever one of these, or age used cars. So this is a nice one for the dealers out there going, well, pick one, this is my biggest bugbear. Great. All right, now to go into the results of our polls. Just to give you a bit of an idea, we have about 160, 170 online participants and about 45 odd people in the audience. So give or take 200 people in the poll, just to give a bit of context. So if we could bring up for the online audience, or everyone in the audience, our first poll, when will the used car bubble burst? 43% of the audience said it's burst already, 27% next 3 months, and down to 21% 3 to 6 months, and 9% for the rest. So I think a very good, clear indication there. Leo, what did you think of that?
Yeah, no, I was quite surprised. I actually voted 3 to 6 months, and I always remember my uncle saying the first depreciation hit is the cheapest. So the longer we're going to hold on to this high value stock, it's going to hurt us more and more. But yeah, it's very interesting.
Good. And Yaku, are you noticing car prices, reduction of car prices being paid on the used car environment in your business?
Yeah, so I think just to start off with, I'm not surprised. In fact, I'm surprised by the 43% not being higher, because I think we've seen over the last 2 months the used car volumes dropping. We didn't see that at the auctions. The car prices on the auctions and the offers really started hitting over the last 2 weeks. And certainly the activity to when there was scarce stock. The guys were all just paying horrendous prices, but you had to play the game in order to get stock. But I think the bubble has burst, and we're seeing the used car prices dropping.
I'd agree with that, Yaku. I also think, I think we're at that critical stage where the market's softening, but we might still be having to overpay, which is a hell of a dangerous situation for us. Jason, what are you seeing online and in your metric as to, does this make sense, and does it relate to what you're seeing in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. We followed the US market. It was doing exactly what the South African market was doing. And then we saw the crash coming. We knew it was imminent, and it was pretty much right now. So those numbers pretty much align with my perspective on that as well. It was coming. So when we start looking at the last 3 months, we start seeing a bit of aging happening on site. So your average days of stock are increasing. Quite a bit as well. You're looking at a 8 to 10, 12% increase on average days on site, and that has obviously got a massive effect on interest bills and everything of the like. And I think you were the one that said it earlier. Be careful of those interest bills; they're going to be increasing now. We saw 17% increase last year in used car prices on site on average. So we are sitting in a bit of a dangerous place at the moment, and it is a consideration we have to have.
Look, I agree with that. I think we just got to be careful of that aging stock, and I think turn is certainly important, and to start moving the metal a bit quicker. We were talking earlier about the used car market itself and the effect of some of the bigger players like We Buy Cars. Leo, what do you think we can take out from them in terms of how we can improve our business when we're going into a bit of a tough market?
Yeah, no, I think they're great at buying cars. You know, and I don't know what they're going to do with all their stock. I'm sure they're moving their stock very quickly, but I mean, they're going to sit with loads and loads of stock. And what's that going to do to the market?
Well, that could also be another force affecting this. So I think
Yes.
that's a really good takeout. I'd agree. I think that we can all learn from buying cars better as franchise dealers, and I think that's one of our bigger takeouts. If you agree with me, Jaco.
Yeah, I think in some of our discussions we've had, I mean, certainly we all see We Buy Cars as a threat, and they have been. But I think, again, you need to look at the opportunities. Like maybe if we take Quinton's thing, we need to look at some of the opportunities. But I think, as we said, their biggest success story is really their whole efficiency in buying vehicles and going out to the market to buy vehicles, where I think in the dealership, franchise dealership environment, we're waiting for the customers to come to us. We should be more aggressive. And I think there's been companies that's changed already, but that's really where I see the success of We Buy Cars.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. Should we?
Yeah,
Alan,
look,
what
I
do you
think-
think, Jason?
Just in terms of that, digitally, I think there's a mindset that needs to change. You know, the reality is that We Buy Cars changed strategy completely 3 or 4 years ago to follow a digital strategy, and it was obvious when they ran that. And you know, their approach was to find the buyer and the seller online. So from our perspective, we saw their shift again, and you know, I think the market as a whole also, if they follow that sort of space, they're going to find a lot of success, not only in buying but also in selling. You know, I think I mentioned a while ago, which was not a newsletter, where I said, you know, you've all got the largest databases available. Digitize them, go and find that stock and do what We Buy Cars done. That's what they done. They used their database. They followed up with their customers, and they ended up buying stock. You know, digitize your databases, go and find your stock there, and then the sellers come naturally. You know, once you have that unicorn that seller's looking for, it's going to happen.
Nothing sells like stock, huh?
Exactly.
Okay. I think we move on to the next poll, which is the new car poll surplus. I think it was the surplus question. When will the OEM short supply of new cars get back to normal or even surplus status? 1 month, very few there, 9%. 3 months, 25%. 6 months, 52%. 12 months, 14%. That's quite interesting on those stats. If you take 6 months, that takes us roughly to the first quarter of next year. And I think, well, at least it's the next year of registration, which is a positive. But I recently had a very interesting engagement with the head of one of the board members of Stellantis in the world that headed up Peugeot. And their view is that the chip supply, global chip supply shortage will probably be fixed very late this year or towards the early part of next year, which is quite interesting that those stats are probably reflecting that as well. What do you guys think on the new car side, Jaco?
Yeah, I think we've seen it, and we're fortunate that we've got quite a lot of brands. So we've certainly seen, and it varies brand by brand, but I think in total there's definitely improvement in stock supply. It obviously is going to put different challenges on it, and I think you alluded to it earlier on, that we need to be careful about the costs that we've been lucky of with low interest rates, low stock volume. So those are the pressures that we're going to have going forward. And I think also the OEMs are going to put pressure on targets and meeting those targets. And in some of our environments, the incentive money that we get for volume is also a big driver. So, I think we're in for a challenging time. I think it's positive that there's more stock available, and it was good to hear that Toyota is predicting a 540,000 market, which is quite an increase from the previous year. So that's exciting.
I agree. I think that's
yeah.
very exciting, and I really like Leon's bullish and positive attitude. I mean, linked with a big market potentially of 540,000, Leo, you're a bit involved on the luxury side, not necessarily directly, operationally. Where do you see the luxury market going? Because they're going to start bringing some volume as well.
Yeah, I think the luxury market is moving towards the more expensive cars. I mean, we see it back in the day, our C-Class was our bread and butter, and now we doing SUVs, S-Classes, and G. So the luxury market is moving to the high price. I think these stats are very interesting. It's only a question of time when the manufacturers start pushing those insane specials and these mad deals, and when they come, it's going to have a massive effect on the used car market. That's what I think, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'd really think regardless of the push from the manufacturers, more cars on the road right now could only be a good thing for our businesses and our market. We've had a bit of a hit on our workshops and our car park, and I think if the rental companies can take up more stock and more government buying and a bit of push through the dealerships, it does help us all in the long run. Jason, I wanted to ask you a question on new cars. Do you see in your platform, because I think of cars and your competitors as principally used platforms, does new car advertising affect your business and the resultant used offerings in a big way in your world?
So weirdly enough, what we do see is we've seen a relative increase or a stabilization and a slight increase on total user counts that are coming through to Cars.co at the moment, and have been for the last quite a while. And we've seen a slight decrease in the used car searches and increases in pushing on what I would then assume to be new cars. Due to the slight decrease on used car searches, that needs to be attributed to some way. But because the traffic has remained stable and increased. So, guys are researching at the moment, and I think that's the thing. Lightstone does mention, or was it Lightstone? Was it Data that does mention that it's a 4-month journey, and it starts with research. So we're seeing quite an uptick now in our content side and our visitors hitting the content side. So we're starting to see that new car buyer starting to do that research, starting to go into that space, and it is already starting to affect the used car searches marginally. So without a doubt, that swing is happening right now. We are seeing a lot more work getting done in that research phase, and we know what comes next is new car purchases.
Okay, interesting. Just to go away from the new car market, but we'll come back to that in the next poll. We had we asked the right to repair question, and maybe we can just release that to everybody. After 1 year, have the aftermarket guidelines had a notable effect on your business throughput? Yes, 6%, no, 94%. Interesting to see that there is actually a 6%, that there has been some effect somewhere, which is really interesting.
If I can answer, Mark, we certainly haven't seen any effect in the areas that we operate in, which is the Mpumalanga area, and we've got two sort of right to repair operations, and we certainly haven't seen an increase in those volumes and affecting our franchise dealers' workshops. But it might be that it's different in the metropoles, I'm not too sure. But certainly in the rural areas, we haven't seen a major move.
Certainly, I would agree with that marginal type stat. Leo, I don't know what your
I
view is
think
there.
this is a testament to the customers not trusting the right to repair shops. I mean, they know dealerships, they trust them, they know they can complain, and so this is basically just the customer. He votes with his money, so, and he said he wants to stick to dealers, and we're happy about that.
Okay. Good. Are there any questions from the audience? Anyone would like to ask a question? We do have a roving mic. Just please raise your hand at any point in time. You've got us here, so please, but otherwise, if a question does come up, feel free anytime put your hand up. Nothing at the moment. Okay. All right. Maybe we can just go back to the new car market. I think that the new car market poll. Have we got that one, guys? How big will this market be? Oh, we've got the electric car question. Sorry, we're going a long journey here. So, my other favorite topic. So, how long will it take the South African market to reach 10% market share of pure electric cars? 1 to 2 years, 2%, 2 to 3 years, 6%, 3 to 5 years. So, in 5 years' time, 27% said that, and beyond 5 years, 66%. Where are you with electric cars? Let's start with you, Leo. What an open question.
Well, my brother drives an I-Pace, and it's a wonderful car, but he can't drive from Joburg to Piet Retief. He has to ride through the. So I think if the technology doesn't sort the range problem out, this is not like Germany where every single town is like 20 kilometers from each other. So I actually voted 5 years and beyond
Okay.
to
Good.
get the 10. Only time will tell, but that's my opinion.
Okay, interesting. Well, certainly in the metro environment,
Yeah.
it probably doesn't make as much sense. It's not as practical.
Yeah.
Did he not know the range when he bought the car?
Well, he uses it in
Okay.
around Joburg.
Oh, really?
so,
Oh,
yeah.
does he live in Joburg? He
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
live in Piet Retief?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Jaco? I thought he lived in Piet Retief and he drove.
I certainly also voted beyond 5
Okay.
years. I cannot see this happening for various reasons. I mean, 10% of the market is quite a big market share. And if you think for the first couple of years, it's going to be your luxury or premium brands bringing in, and it's going to be very expensive. And it's certainly only going to be in the metropoles. I can't see it be anywhere else. So
You both
if-
are based non-metro, metros, your
and we
point of
both,
reference.
yeah. So, and if you think of the luxury market, what is it? We were saying one of
Yeah.
the questions I think was when is it going to break the 1% ceiling? You know, I don't believe the volume brands is going to be in it at this point in time within the next couple of years. So 5 years and beyond definitely is my answer.
I think there was a question from the online audience regarding electric cars. Are you guys able to pick that up? It was quite an interesting one. I think the essence of the question was certainly what is to get to 10%, to get to a 10% market share of electric cars, what percentage of ICE cars would potentially get converted into electric cars to try and get to that statistic? There we go. What percentage of petrol and diesel vehicles will be converted to electric drivetrains once electric car sales reach 10%? Now, this is quite an interesting phenomenon. In Europe, they will not be able to sell anything other than an electric car from 2030. So all sales of cars are 100% electric. Okay, so that will be a market that sells 20 million cars a year. Okay, a quarter of the world's cars are sold in Europe, roughly. So can you imagine what will happen to the ICE cars on the road? Where will they come, or what will they do with them? Because there's a car park there of probably 80 million cars. So Stellantis actually said one of the other projects is actually dealing with the fact of having to convert those ICE cars into electric cars at the same time, because ultimately you can't just sit with all the metal. So it's quite an interesting question that we are, especially in Africa, going to be sitting with certain cars that might be sitting in Europe that will be defunct on the road and might have to be converted into electric one day. Certainly if the technology presents that. Interesting point of debate. Jason, where are you on electric cars?
So absolutely, it's beyond 5 years.
Okay.
But what I can tell you is interestingly, the consumers out there, the interest in the electric vehicle is growing substantially. You know, our content channel that we provide, a lot of YouTube and videos and everything of the like, two of the biggest videos that we had this year were both electrics. So there's a tremendous amount of interest in it. I think we just need to get everything right before it's going to get there. So yeah.
Okay, good.
I just an interesting
Yes.
point, maybe not to the question, but the other interesting point is, I mean, our volume sales comes from, or a lot of volume comes from local manufacturers.
Right.
And when will they be geared to manufacture electric vehicles? So are these OEMs, local manufacturing, just going to disappear? Because it does contribute in a big sense to our GDP. So
I think it's almost I wouldn't say existential crisis, but it's actually almost a crisis facing our local OEMs. That ultimately, if we're exporting to Europe, we won't be able to export any cars to Europe from 2030 because 100% of European sales will be electric. So we certainly, the manufacturers in this country have to actually produce those cars. They will not have a choice, otherwise they won't have factories. Now think about who we have in making cars for. We're making cars for Mercedes-Benz, for BMW, for VW, for Ford, which I think is actually, Ford is probably the market leader in American brands doing electric in America. They're actually very, very progressive. So I think that if we won't have factories making cars unless they do make electric, I think beyond 2030 is probably where we're going to see the wave once those cars get made. So it's a really interesting point, yeah? Okay, Jaco, sorry. All right. No questions from the audience? Anyone got a question on electric cars or something? Okay, there we go. Okay, it's coming. Okay, yeah.
One of the things that always crossed my mind was that maybe not so much as a question, but maybe a statement. If you have a look at the amount of vehicles in the third world countries across the globe, I mean, what are you going to do with the millions and millions and millions of ICE vehicles roaming around, including Africa, Brazil, India, and those countries? How do they convert to electric?
So in my discussions with sort of OEMs and that, the view is that those markets will be phased in a lot longer. So where Europe is going to be a 100% electric market, America will be a 30 to 40% market. Asia, Africa would be very similar to those levels. It's almost impossible to have an electric rollout to those countries. So that, you know, even speaking to Mahindra the other day, actually, and I asked them, what is the electric? They haven't even set a date where they will be all electric. So I think those types of OEMs, where they are very predominantly into diesel and very predominantly into countries where there just isn't infrastructure, I think your timelines are beyond 2040, 2050 kind of thing. That would be my view. Anybody else?
Right. And that's probably a positive for our OEMs and manufacturing in South Africa, because there's going to be those markets out there that will require still.
Well, absolutely. We have a huge diesel market, especially on our light commercials. We need those powertrains. We don't certainly want diesel to be rolled out. And a lot of the European manufacturers have stopped developing anything more on diesel. So the diesel technology and R&D is flat. It's finished. So these are the quite interesting factors that we have to bear in mind. The other problem that we have with ICE cars in South Africa, however, is our standard of petrol, and that all of our, especially our petrol and diesel, has to convert to Euro 6, and that's going to be a major problem. If we don't get that in time, we actually won't even be able to drive ICE cars with the petrol that we have, especially certainly for the European markets. Leo, you've got something.
I was just thinking I think the biggest factor in electric cars is price.
Yeah.
I don't think people don't want to buy them. I think they're too expensive, and people that buy cars it's just too expensive at the moment. So once that price comes down, and I don't see that happening anytime soon, then people will buy electric cars.
Good.
And infrastructure improve.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, still have Eskom, and certainly the infrastructure in the petrol stations or whatever to cope with it.
And charging times.
Yeah, and I think a big misunderstanding is like everyone thinks the electric car is free. It's not free. You still have to plug it in, and it's units.
Yes.
So every time my brother parks in my garage, I got a little plug there for him, and he has to give me $300 to charge him full. It's not free.
Yeah.
So
You charge your butt.
Yeah.
Good. There's no gimmies in the Stuckey family.
no.
Okay, good. Okay, nice one, guys. I think let's go back to the South African local market and some numbers there. We did quite a nice poll. I don't know if the rest of you can see it. So where were the industry sales going to end up this year? So here we go. 500 to 510,000 is 29%. 510 to 520, there's the Goldilocks zone, 45%, and greater than 530, 25%. I'm really glad we put the question out before Leon's speech. So everybody's actually a little bit pessimistic, but I thought I was really encouraged by what Leon had to say, and the fact that we can have a bit of a bigger market. We were talking earlier, chaps, about some of the non-traditional, non-factory members that used to always be below the top 7, all the factories with factories on the NAAMSA totem pole. And we've seen some amazing stats from importers, the likes of Suzuki, who's just obviously shot the lights out. What do you think is the success of those importers, dealing with things like the rand, etc., but they're still doing success and volume?
I mean, just quickly on Suzuki, and we're fortunate also to have those Suzuki in our stable, but I think it's affordable, good quality vehicles that's playing in the right segments, and I must say it's probably the brand that had the least effect on stock volumes. So stock availability has been good throughout, and then I think it's just good quality, affordable vehicles playing in the good good segments.
Absolutely.
Strong
And
segments.
We were talking about the effect of the Chinese as well, Leo. I think the same thing. Generally speaking, the Chinese have been able to supply, but some ridiculously success stories in Aval and now especially Cherry.
Yeah, we lucky enough to have Vaval and Cherry, and a big thing is that story where people would say that Chinese isn't good quality. That's been broken because these cars are rock solid, and I think that was, that's a big thing that people had against these Chinese cars. So you're getting good quality, good tech, reliability, dealer network at the right price, and the disposable income of everyone is just so much less. And if you still want to drive a nice new car, well then that is your option, in my opinion.
You must have seen more searches in that direction now with those brands growing.
Absolutely, and it's not just the brands. I think it's the price bracket. South Africans are super price sensitive. As soon as you start seeing those price increases kicking, you start seeing petrol increasing, you start seeing interest rates increasing, you immediately see an influx of people searching for lower amounts. And that is I think where the Chinese guys have hit it on the head. I mean, the both Cherry as well as Aval have come in. They've been extremely competitive in terms of pricing, and our market is very price sensitive. And I see it in the used car searches as well. There's a trend buying down. Guys are feeling the pinch. So I think you look at the market as a whole. You need to look at the top echelon, which will progress, which will buy, and then you've got a large portion at the bottom, which is heavily affected on all of these effects, economics, fuel, all of these things at the moment. So from our perspective, it's definitely buying down, and I think those guys they've catered for that end of the market. They brought in a great product, good quality at the right price.
Right. One of the areas in the market at the moment that certainly people aren't buying down are the trucks. We've certainly seen some phenomenal numbers in heavy and extra heavy, particularly in terms of the volume, which is a great economic indicator. Leo, you run your truck division in your business. Can you give us some insights into what is happening and what is driving this buoyancy?
Yeah, I think one of the main contributors is the commodity prices going up. I mean, the exports that are happening, the rail that isn't working well. I mean, on the N2, you can't even drive down to Durban properly without just passing 1,000 trucks. And the cost of the actual truck is very small in the total cost of ownership compared to the diesel. So that's why the European truck makers now at this point are ahead, because they got the efficient trucks. And there's many, you got orders and you don't have stock to, I mean, there's story of our lives, but yeah, that's where the trucking world is at the moment. It's strong and it's good.
Yeah, and also driving good workshop volumes as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
Maybe something just to mention, and we're talking about the cost of running a truck, and although the actual day-to-day cost is more impact on the decision making, the guys are really starting to look at some of the Chinese brands as well, especially in the extra heavy. And I mean, I'm sure everybody has seen the numbers of FAW coming through very strongly.
Absolutely. Making huge
So
market
that I
share
think
gains.
that is important.
Without a doubt. I really enjoyed that. Do you partake at all in that
No.
market? It's
So
not.
don't ask me about commercial.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just
I
checking.
can make up something if you like on the fly.
Okay. Certainly economic indicators, and I think since COVID, the world supply chain crisis has helped trucking, and I think at least we have that in our country. Certainly the mining industry, the war in Ukraine has actually, if you just look at what's happening with the lack of supply in those markets, Russia not allowed to supply technically, and the Ukraine can't, and certainly that's affecting the Northern Cape quite nicely in terms of the manganese mining, and there's a lot of trucks on our roads, which does mess up our roads, but at least it drives the economy a bit, which is very positive. There's another poll question which I'd like to present, which was I think it was the last one. It was which factors below are affecting your dealership most at present? Downward buying trends, 30%, quite a nice big chunk there. Competitive Chinese players in the market, 13%. Interest rate increases by the Reserve Bank, 39%. And aging used car stock. I really like that. So the buying down trend and interest rate increases are sort of 70% of that, which is really interesting to see.
Yeah, I think if we look at the one that came out the highest, I don't think we've seen the worst. You know, if it's affecting you now, I think over the next couple of months, with the things that we've mentioned earlier on, more stock becoming available, I think we're gonna be under pressure there to manage your stock levels with interest rates. So certainly, definitely one of the keys.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are still in an interest rate increase cycle. Even the Federal Reserve yesterday, the bankers will know, Andre and Colin, that are here, that the Fed yesterday still said they will do anything to combat inflation, and interest rate, they are going to continue to be as aggressive as possible until they can see signs of inflation being contained. That unfortunately makes South Africa, we have no choice. If the American interest rate goes up, we have to go up because the dollar is a harbor currency. That is, as soon as you're getting good returns in dollars, you need to have good returns in an emerging market currency. So we still will unfortunately have a little bit of interest rate hikes there. We do, however, fortunately seem to have a petrol price decrease, and with the price of Brent crude coming down to $93 now for about 2-3 weeks, and the rand coming back a little bit, we might have a bit of relief there, which helps everyone, even the truckers. All right. The other point I wanted to raise, and just a really good general point, is just the risk of the trade. And you know, in times of these, when the market slows down, problems happen in the trade. There has been a bit of movement in the market with some big frauds happening, and I'll just urge every NADA dealer or any dealer in the country to please check your used car trade-ins, please check the validity of that, please check who you're buying from. Don't trust this trader that you've been trusting for the last 4 years. I know they're your best mate. You don't know who they're buying from. And there have been some really, really big problems in the trade recently, some huge numbers. So guys, I'm just asking you to please be careful of that. I don't know if you guys have experienced that or know people of people, but you know, at this time, I remember in the 2008 crisis that the trade dried up and they start becoming not able to write checks, and sometimes that drives bad behavior. Please just be careful of that. You can really run into trouble there. So on that note, we have another question from the audience. Just a comment on electric vehicles. The South African government has not announced the phase out of combustion vehicle sales yet, as is the case around the world. No. Certainly there's been no phase out or announcement on South Africa. I know NAAMSA, however, are still in negotiations with the Department of Trade and Industry to try get ad valorem duties off the calculation of the import of electric cars. In other words, that will make electric cars a lot more price competitive. That's headed up by Mike Mabasa and the team, and that is ongoing. But we certainly haven't there. You know, there's not a lot of pressure in the emerging market currencies to cut emissions as there is the established currency, so we will have to wait and see and look at that one. Are there any more points we would like to raise? I think we've gone through all the polls. I think we've gone through everything. Anyone from the audience here that got any last questions? Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, hang on. There's a microphone coming now, because then the online audience can hear.
Cheers. Mark, my question is this, and I'm not sure who I will direct it at, but anybody who feels comfortable, please answer it. Assuming I was in the market for a new Toyota, just by way of example, and I bought a new Toyota with the Toyota Care extended warranty, but for whatever reason, I chose to service my car at a Bosch service station down the road. Would I, in terms of the whole right to repair issue, would I run the risk of getting a lower trade-in when I come back to you to replace it?
Very good question. So that was actually debated on 702, and I will try to send that out. I think, in my view, and this is my view only, when you buy a 3, 4, 5-year-old car, every person asks full service history with agents. So that is the premium sort of package. I would also assume then you didn't take a service plan. So you decoupled your service plan and you decide, I'm going to service this car on my own. So on a face level, my personal view is your best trading value is going to be with the OEM. Without a doubt. I mean, and then just let's take that one less. So let's take a really good, reputable workshop. Then there are some very good RMI type workshops out there. There's some good personalities, people we know and people we trust. And let's just say they were trained up by the Toyota Academy with their mechanics. Now it's impossible for that to have happened now. That's going to still take a couple of years. And they use the right amount of parts. You might be slightly better off, not as well off, but you're going to be not badly off. Where the problem will be, and this is where it's a disaster, if you service your car at 5 different places, non-franchise, at the end of the 5 years, I think categorically you will never ever get the same value out of that versus the OEM service. So I think it's a great question, and I think it's something that we as NADA dealers and franchise dealers need to keep pushing out into the market, that if somebody wants to decouple their service plan and they want to service it on their own, that the non-franchise market certainly isn't trained up yet. And the customers don't necessarily have the confidence. The trade doesn't have the confidence in them. That would be my view. I don't know what you guys would think of that.
So there are examples in other countries around the world where right to repair was implemented. And I think the short answer is yes, it does. When you look at the markets out there, it is a general occurrence. And I think the general public should be made aware of it. There's always two sides to the story. But when you looked at, there are far more developed markets, but there are commonalities amongst them. But it certainly does, and we should inform our consumers of that as well.
Yeah, I think it's a communication thing that we need to take responsibility for when we deal with our customers. That certainly currently, and I think it's going to take some time for the right repair guys to get to the standard and levels that we're up to, and therefore there's a price to pay for it, because there's a cost to it. If you look at all the equipment and diagnostic tools and training up your qualified technicians. And you need to communicate that to your customers.
Good. Okay. All right. Okay. I think if there's no more questions, I think we can wrap up. There will be, for those of you that are here physically, there will be some refreshments, and please, I encourage you to stay and have some refreshments and some snacks. Other than that, it's been a fantastic session. I want to thank the panel. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I hope that was good value to everybody. That was my favorite part of the day. And to all the team, and thank you very much for everyone attending, the sponsors and the local dealers. So thank you very much.